Welcome, everyone. I'm just so delighted that you've tuned in for Hawthorn University's All About Alumni. And since we have a number of new people with us today, I want to let you know that if you're listening for the first time, All About Alumni is our platform to showcase Hawthorn graduates who share their post-grad activities and accomplishments. You know, the many ways that they're using their Hawthorn education and their practices is nothing short of amazing. We have a variety of nationally accredited degree and certificate programs at Hawthorn. Some of them are for people that are pursuing a clinical track with the goal of working directly with clients, while we have other programs that are dedicated to those that are seeking primarily to educate, like write books, develop courses, workshop programs, public speaking, teaching. And then we have other programs for those who simply want to learn valuable, credible information in a conducive environment. The success of our students is really a testament to Hawthorn's mission and principles to provide quality, affordable, holistic health and nutrition education. That's why we all love to learn more at Hawthorn. And I'm your host, Paula Bartholomew. I'm one of the founders of Hawthorn, and it's really such a pleasure to get to speak with and feature our graduates. So let's get started here today. Today we feature Amy Gernaat, and she's a two-program Hawthorn graduate from both our Wise Traditions program as well as the Nutrition Consultant Clinical Training program. And today Amy's going to discuss sparking the reclamation, creating the new paradigm of health and vitality. She's going to be sharing how the path to reclaiming health starts with knowing yourself from the inside out and discovering the truth of why you're here. She'll also discuss why she chose Hawthorn and all she's been doing and accomplishing since graduating. And according to Amy, the radical paradigm shift in health has begun. It's no longer a time to dip our toes in the water. It's time for reclamation. And certainly while I have the pleasure of interviewing and conversing with Amy, those of you that are attending live also have the opportunity to ask her questions directly too. So we don't want you to hold back. Simply post a question or a comment to the question panel. And we are recording this and we'll post it to our website in just a few days. You'll find it in archived webinars. All right. Welcome, and I want to say hello, finally, Amy. I'm so excited to be here together.
Hello, so happy to be here as well.
Lovely, lovely. It's my pleasure to introduce you and have you start sharing your post-grad activities. So let me give you a little bit of background on Amy. She is a holistic nutrition consultant specializing in digestion, fatigue, stress, autoimmune conditions too. She has a private practice in Houston, Texas, and she received her nutrition certifications through Hawthorn University and has additional training through Functional Nutrition Alliance Full Body Systems, as well as Irene, Lyon Smart Body, Smart Mind Healing Trauma at the nervous system level. Amy is also a 200-hour RYT certified yoga instructor and has a certificate as a Simply Being Well traditional foods teacher. Amy guides her clients through the process of healing by reconnecting with themselves. She works in depth to help them identify where they're out of sync in body and mind and uncover how they are unconsciously leaking energy. She guides them through the process of learning to listen to the direction of their own bodies and use their intuition to create a strong foundation for healing and mastering vitality. Beautiful, just beautiful approach to healing and working with people, Amy.
Thank you.
Well, we're
Yeah,
really pleased, everybody, that you're here to hear Amy. Amy, are you ready to share it?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, I'm thinking that a good place to start is really what led you to pursue the path of nutrition.
Absolutely. So pursuing the path for me has been a lifelong thing, really. So I think so many of us, when we get started down this road, it's because of our own health, or it's the health of a family member or friend that has kind of sparked questions. So I've had health issues really since childhood. So about 2 years old, I started having really severe digestive issues. So I vacillate between very severe diarrhea, very severe constipation. My little belly would be like hard as a rock. And we went to a number of doctors. No one could really figure out what was going on with me. I had multiple nutrient deficiencies. I'd have very dry skin. My hair would be like straw. And really, truly, nobody really knew what was wrong. I remember having to take sugar out at one point, and we took dairy out at one point. We never took wheat out, and we were wheat farmers. but my symptoms basically progressed. I was always pretty sick, lots of ear infections, lots of illness as a child. And they basically said, well, we don't know what's wrong with you. You're just going to grow out of it. So that's kind of what we went with. Like, this is the way my body is made, and I just have to live with it. And so I did grow out of some of the earlier issues, but they just turned into other things. So I didn't have the severe diarrhea, constipation, but I always had like a bloated belly. It was just always kind of distended. And then as I got into my teenage years, I had horrible problems with my monthly cycle, really severe cramping issues where I would almost kind of have the flu. So I'd be really, really sick. Then I started getting migraines and chronic headaches. And all the things that kind of came on as a teenager kind of stuck with me. These things didn't really ever clear, and I didn't really have any concept other than going to the doctor to get medication to deal with them. I started getting chronic sinus infections, so I would have 4 to 5 sinus infections a year, and of course on antibiotics 4 to 5 times a year because of that. And essentially no one had any answers for me. And so I just was kind of like, okay, well, I have to just deal with this. I never really considered food other than when I was really young, taking some of the food out. And I just vaguely remember that. But I never really considered that food might be creating any of the problems that I was having. All I thought about food was, well, it's calories in, calories out, and it's either weight gain or weight loss. And I had no connection to food being a product of health or ill health other than that. And so those kind of symptoms just kind of stuck with me for about 15 years. And into my early 30s, I started having, I had put on some weight, which was a weird thing for me. I was always very, very thin, partially because of the nutrient deficiencies. But I had put on some weight and I wasn't feeling good, and I was finally able to drop that. And then I started having some weird issues with pressure in the upper part of my chest, and it was very scary. I didn't understand what was happening, and so I finally went to a cardiologist, and because my GP wasn't sure what was going on, so I went to cardiologist, and they didn't really know what was going on. They wanted to come back and see me, but when I left, I walked out the door with paperwork on hysteria, and I got in the car and I read that, and I was furious because essentially the doctor was telling me it was all in my head. And I knew that was not right. I knew there was something wrong. So after that, I went to see an ENT, and they had diagnosed me with upper esophageal reflux. And they gave me a little bit of dietary information, but mostly they wanted to put me on Nexium. And so I'm in my early 30s at this point, and I'm like, I don't want to go on medication for the rest of my life, because that's essentially what was being told to me. And so I was like, I've got to do something different. So I started researching what else I could do besides the Nexium. And this book popped up called Natural Alternatives to Nexium. And they had it at Barnes and Noble. So I drove right over, bought the book, and I went and had lunch, and I just started reading. And so I'm reading through this book, and there was lots of different things mentioned, but one of the things it talked about was food allergies and food intolerances, and in particular gluten. This is 10 years ago. This is in 2010. I had no idea what that meant. There was not a whole lot of information about that at the time. So I started researching it. And as I started researching it, I'm like, a lot of the things they're saying in relation to gluten intolerance sounds like what I dealt with as a child. Like, these symptoms are all matching up to me. And so I was like, okay, well, there's something to this. So I took gluten out of my diet, and I had a radical health transformation within a couple of months. I had no more bloating. My chronic headaches were gone, and I had a headache pretty much every day. That was just normal. I lived on Excedrin migraine. I had a headache all the time. The headaches were gone. I lost about 25 pounds. Then my cycle regulated, and I wasn't having all of the severe cramping anymore. And all of these things changed, and I was completely awestruck. I had no idea it would make that kind of a change for me. I really thought it was just going to be the reflux. So this was a huge turning point. And, this radical shift just helped me realize that there was so much more to food than just the calories.
Oh my gosh, and what a discovery too, as you're starting sharing, it's like you were wheat farmers.
Yeah. We were wheat farmers. We had homemade bread all of the time. Yes. I'm out in the wheat fields. I'm playing in the wheat. I'm eating wheat bread all of this time. And no, it was never brought up. There was dairy and sugar, but the wheat was never addressed.
what your poor microbiome, through your whole body, is this sweat from
Yes.
your gut. It's such an example of the health of the gut and the influence
Oh,
that it has on everything. And, year by year, day by day, my goodness, what you lived with, what you were surviving with, what you just
yes.
thought was your norm.
Yes. That's
Wow.
the
Yeah.
perfect way to put it, is that it's really surviving. It's not really living.
Mm-mm.
It's really surviving. That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah. When you're
Yeah.
having the multiple symptoms that you just endured really every day,
Hmm.
and
Yes.
then to get a hysteria.
I was really upset. I was really furious because I just knew, I'm like, no, there's something wrong in my body. Something is not working right. And so I was really upset about that. But
Sure.
it in the end of the day, of course, and we'll get to this, it has helped me in my practice.
Sure. I wish
Yeah.
that people could say, I don't know. I just don't
Yes.
know. Let's
Yes.
explore this some,
Yes,
rather
exactly.
than.
It's much more helpful to just say, I don't know, but let's try to figure this out.
All right. Well, let's move into a little bit after experience such really major health changes with food. How did you decide on, how did you find Hawthorn? How did you decide us?
Yes. So I started kind of looking, I'm thinking, as you know, so this year progressed from 2010 to 2011, and I was just so kind of in awe and blown away by what happened. And so I started kind of researching, well, maybe I want to do this as, for a living. Maybe I want to help other people make this, transition and understand more about this. So I just started researching. And honestly, so I found Hawthorn through the Weston Price Foundation, and I can't even remember how I found the Weston Price Foundation. I don't know if I was looking for somebody local, and I actually met the local chapter leader just kind of randomly, of course, at the local farmers market. And so I got introduced to the Weston Price Foundation, and I went to there happened to be a conference that year in Dallas, I'm in Houston, so it's about 4 or 5 hours away. So I went to the conference, and I'm sitting and listening to all these speakers. And again, this was very new to me, like real food. Even I had taken the gluten out, but I still didn't really understand like real food. So this was very new to me. And I'm listening to all these speakers, and I am just in complete awe. So Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, who does the GAPS diet, was one of the speakers. And I didn't know anything about GAPS, but I was like, well, it sounds kind of interesting. So I went and sat and listened. And I'm listening to her talk, and I'm like, she's describing my childhood. Like, oh my gosh, I have never heard anybody talk about the things that were going on in my body ever. And so I was like, okay, I need to know more. So I think Hawthorn actually had a booth there. And so I was talking to whoever was running the booth, got the information, looked Hawthorn up, and I was completely fascinated by the Wise Traditions program. And I really wanted to do the nutrition consultant program. And I'm like, let me just kind of ease into this and kind of, feel into it a little bit. So I started the Wise Traditions program, which was really all about understanding who Weston Price Foundation is, who Weston Price was. And we don't unfortunately have time to go into all of that today. So I highly recommend, if you're interested, to go to the Weston Price Foundation.org, westonaprice.org, and look more about him, because what he did as a dentist back in the 30s and 40s to understand the nutrient deficiencies in the population he was seeing is astounding, and you couldn't repeat it today. So it's really fascinating. So I went through the Wise Tradition study, and it gave me such an amazing foundation of how food affects the body, how important nutrient density in the food is, and how depleted our food is now, and different ways that we can prepare our foods so that we can get more out of them. And it gave me an amazing foundation and understanding of just food in general. And so I actually, at the same time I was started the nutrition consultant program, I went through the Simply Being Well program, which is Monica Corrado, and learn how to prepare traditional foods and how to teach. So how to teach fermentation, how to teach bone broth process, all of those things. And it was amazing. And so then when I paired the nutrition consultant program with that foundation, it was a game changer, because like I had some of the understanding now of the food, but when I paired it with the clinical training, it was a whole world opened up to me that I just didn't understand before. And of course, we still have a lot of healthcare practitioners today who don't think food has anything to do with the health of the body. And the training I went through showed completely the opposite. And even going back to that experience with getting the paperwork on hysteria, it just, really solidified that, like, no, I wasn't crazy. I knew something was going on in my body, and that the foods that I was putting in weren't necessarily working or were working, but then also the health of the gut. Oh, that was probably the big one for me, the health of the gut, and how that literally sort of filters through the entire rest of the body, and it can affect everything from joint health to brain fog to neurologic to autoimmune conditions to hormone function. It's really just this huge center point. And so that was probably the most influential part for me going through the nutrition consultant program, is really having an in-depth understanding of how the gut works and how it interconnects to everything that's going on in the body, and how it's so important to always start there.
Right. Thank you. Beautiful. Certainly the Wise Traditions program sort of, it opened up more thoughts and influenced you in that way too. And that we also have a program dedicated right to the Weston A. Price. It's the Master of Science in Traditional Nutrition program.
Yes.
So yeah, people want to learn more and get steeped in it and really develop themselves and their practices around it. It's a good program. So let's, with all that said, Amy, let's how did you start your practice with these foundations?
Yes, so starting my practice, so I was in school, I started my business in 2014. So I was in school for the nutrition consulting at the time, and I began my practice by doing cooking demos and cooking classes. So I started with like fermentation classes, bone broth classes. Then I actually was introduced to a couple of functional medicine doctors here locally and started working with them to do cooking demos and give presentations on food and food preparation. And it was really fun and such a cool thing for them to offer their patients. And because I was pretty well versed at that time of how food affects the body, especially for people dealing with inflammatory issues, so anti-inflammatory foods, and I was pretty well versed in autoimmune paleo at the time. I had done some of that for myself, and that went a long way to healing my body. And so I would go in and do that kind of work, and it was really, really fun. I absolutely loved it. I did that for a couple of years with them, which just gave me a lot of confidence in speaking to people and speaking about what I knew and what I knew at the time and the best way to present that, but then giving people real life practical skills of how to use this in your home. Like, if you can't do gluten and dairy and all these things, like, what are you supposed to eat and how do you prepare food? So I did a lot of like, here's different recipes, here's how you prepare them, and exposing them to different things that they may not have eaten before, and showing real food can taste really, really good. It's just a matter of understanding how to prepare them. So I started with that, and it was just amazing. So that was in 2014. In 2015, at the end of the year, I had been doing actually in-home cooking classes, which was also really fun. And it was mostly based on anti-inflammatory, people with food allergies, food intolerances, and helping them kind of navigate that world. And so the end of the year, it had been a very stressful year. We were buying and selling a home. And during that process, we had some issues with selling the house and purchasing the house, and we were in a hotel for about 5-6 weeks. And I was working from home, of course, at the time, so I'm in the hotel the majority of the time. I was teaching some yoga classes, but mostly there. And one morning I went to teach a yoga class, and I got really sick. I was really dizzy. I was throwing up profusely, and I couldn't walk. And finally got me to the hospital, and didn't really know what was going on at first. They just knew I had really severe extreme vertigo. And within about a week of that time, I was finally diagnosed with something called vestibular neuritis, which is essentially damage to the vestibular nerve in the inner ear. For me, it was my left ear. It's typically brought on by viral infection. I have had mono, so we think it was probably Epstein-Barr, because I have had some chronic fatigue issues with that. And so it essentially almost creates like a lesion, kind of almost like a cold sore on that nerve. And so what it caused for me was very intense chronic vertigo. So this isn't just the type of you stand up and everything is kind of dizzy for a minute or it's a little spinny, or you like roll over funny because there's a positional vertigo and then it goes away. Mine was every time I moved my head. So the world, I called it the world wobbled. So there was just this constant moving like this, like waves with every turn of the head. And it was very devastating. I was very disabled for about a year. It took about 7 months before I could drive. So of course I'm shutting my business down in this point. And I also had to actually delay. Thankfully, Hawthorn was so wonderful about working with me because I had to delay my last class a couple of times. And y'all were just amazing working with me through that process because I couldn't be on the computer for more than like about 15 minutes at a time because the screen movement actually really triggered the vertigo really badly. So during that time, it took about, I had to do very intense physical therapy, and within about 7 months, I was finally able to drive, but I was still pretty disabled. I had very severe chronic fatigue where I could be okay for a day or two, and then I would be laid flat for many days. It's very hard to put into words what it feels like to go through something like that. It was scary. There was times I thought this was going to be the rest of my life, that I was not going to recover. But partly because of my training, actually a lot of because of the training I was getting through Hawthorn, I knew that the body could heal itself in the right environment. I knew that there's an innate wisdom and the body could correct itself. And I needed to kind of back off and get out of my own way and allow that to happen. So that's what I did. And I just said, okay, this is what's going on. I actually did restart my business with one-on-one consulting at the end of 2016. I had graduated about 5 months earlier and started seeing clients. I could only work about 5 to 10 hours a week, which was fine. And I just slowly allowed myself to recover. And it took me about 3 years. So it was about 2018 before I would say I was like 100%. And I still have a little bit of residual. So when I turn my head, sometimes I'll still notice it, but it's non-existent at this point. And thankfully also I have healed the chronic fatigue as well. So I'm not having those problems. But all of that, it was happening at the same time. I was rebooting my business and kind of retooling, which has now led me to where I am today. And all of those things have sort of not defined, but they have helped me understand working with people with chronic conditions and what it feels like and what it means from the physiology, but also what's underneath it.
Wow. Yeah, significant setbacks, you know, to have achieved such, regained such health, and to have something like this come out of the blue, literally, in a hotel room. It's like, you know, the viral Epstein-Barr can be so incredibly challenging, and, you know, a viral infection, in a hotel room. Makes me wonder about mold and different exposures.
There was actually, I'm glad you said that because there was mold in the EC units. And so I'm pretty certain that was just kind of that was just like the straw that broke the camel's back. That was just kind of the last thing, and my body just couldn't take anymore. And that just kind of set my body over the edge because I had been under tremendous stress the whole year.
Well, I'm glad that led you on the path that you wanted to keep moving forward on. So let's talk, you know, just go in a little bit more about how the setbacks led you to form the business that you have today.
Absolutely. So during the course of that, of course, again, it was very challenging, and I did a lot of soul searching during that time of, okay, I know there's more to the story here. I know that there's more than just the Epstein-Barr. I know that there was more than the mold exposure, that those were things that happened to me physically, but I was very, very aware that the level of stress I was under that year leading up to being sick was very severe, and it had been for a couple of years, and I ignored the signs. I would have times where I would be doing, you know, a cooking class out of my home, and I would be so tired, even just setting up, that I'd almost be in tears. But I just was thinking, oh, I'm just being lazy, you know, the whole, you know, we have to just keep going, you have to be busy, just push on through. And that had been just such a mantra for me. And so looking back and really, really looking internally and seeing what was really going on and what led me to that point, because there was more to the story there. And so as I was doing the soul searching, I went through and did a little bit more functional nutrition training, and then the nervous system training was amazing. It's not something that you get certified in, this particular training. It's really just a deeper understanding of what's going on in the nervous system, because I knew this was an aspect of what happened to me, that my body was just under such a tremendous amount of stress, of a mental and emotional stress, that my system just couldn't take it anymore, and it just wigged out. And of course, we know that when you're in sympathetic overdrive, that your immune system is downregulated, the digestion is downregulated, all of these things are kind of going offline because they're not essential. So the deeper I dove into the nervous system training, I was like, oh my gosh, now I really understand what happened in my body by me ignoring how I was really feeling, the emotional aspect of how I was feeling. I was just ignoring those things. I was ignoring how I felt. I was ignoring my feelings. Like, I didn't want to feel anything. So I like to say a lot of us live from the neck up. We don't want to feel what's going on in the body, and we have to feel to heal. We need to go through emotion. We need to feel them. It doesn't mean we want to stay there and be in that kind of level of emotional pain a long time, but we have to allow ourselves the experience of going through the emotion. And so as I went through this experience and started more working with clients, and what I started realizing working with clients is that the clinical side was just the tip of the iceberg. Like, I could go through and work with someone on their gut health and like what they're eating, make sure it's supported if we think there's a leaky gut going on and all of that. But if I didn't talk to them about all of the other aspects of their life and where their energy was going, that they didn't really get a whole lot better. They would have improvements, but not the vitality that I knew was available for them. And so as I started kind of dipping my toe at the time into asking some of those deeper, personal questions, like, what's going on in your relationships? How do you feel about your job or your career path? What are some things that happened to you as a child? So when I do an intake, I go from birth to now, and I'm not only looking at things that were happening in the body, like illnesses and things like that. I'm also asking, what was going on in your life as a child? Did you have significant losses? Were you a sick child? Because that is very traumatic. Or in the hospital, did your parents get divorced? What are the things that happened to you throughout your lifetime? Because it matters. It makes a difference as far as what we have going on in the body, because what matters actually creates matter, and it creates disruption in the energy flow of the body, is what I have discovered in working with these clients. So as I created Strong, Soft, Wild, and it's really very much driven towards women right now. There's a men's program like out there somewhere, but it's not quite there yet. But as I started developing that program and really starting to understand that so much of the physical illness was a lack of connection to self, like not knowing who they were, not knowing what they're here to do, not just kind of living on autopilot in the world that we've created, that like, okay, there's A to Z, you're born, and then you go to school, and then you go to college, and then you get married, and on and on. And so we've got this timeline, and people are living on autopilot in the timeline. All these disruptions are happening because they have no idea what they're actually here for, or what they actually want for their lives. So when they come in to work with me, it's like, what do you really want? And it's not just the weight loss. It's not just to feel better. That's an aspect of it. But what do you really want for your life? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Let's build your individualized program around what you want. Because if you build it around what they want, then they attain well-being overall, as opposed to maybe just feeling a little bit better. And when you put that into perspective of like, what does it mean when they can do that 5, 10, 15 years down the line? How does that change their life in that period of time? And it's phenomenal. The sky's the limit when we can look at them as a whole. And so what I really do is actually create experts on self. I help people become experts of who they are. They're their own experts, like they're their own healthcare system. They know what they need. And by tapping in and tuning into that energy, they're always going to know what they need, and they can take that tool with them for the rest of their life. And it will transform who they are in every area, and the decisions that they make in every area. Paula, are you there? Did I lose you?
Thank you. You did.
Oh, I was like, where did you go?
I'm muted because there's some work outside and there's a little bit of noise. I apologize.
I totally understand. That happened to me this morning on a call.
I appreciate what you're saying so much in the way that you work, and just with your intake alone, starting with birth to the present, and your description here is so really further elaborates on your bio and the way that you work so energetically with and so personally, not just symptomology, but really personally with clients.
Yes.
I start with pregnancy. It's like, what was the pregnancy like?
Mm-hmm.
Was it a challenging pregnancy? I mean, what was your experience? And do you know the birth story?
Yes. That's an important story
forward,
that a lot of times we don't think about. Yes, it's an important story.
It's a piece. It can be a piece.
It is. It can be a piece of the puzzle. Wow. Yes. Yeah.
Well, let's go a little bit deeper now into telling us a little bit more of the ins and outs of your programs and how you developed them.
Sure. So as I started to develop the Strong Soft Wild program, which kind of came to me last year, and it was because it was the recognition of needing to create an approach with my clients where we're talking about all of these things, like what is the truth for you? What kind of patterns have you been living by? What kind of behaviors have you been displaying that aren't good for you? They're not serving you, but you don't know how to get out of them, and how that relates to the physical body. So I'm always kind of bridging kind of the gap of what's going on with the emotional, spiritual, mental side, and what's going on with the physical body, and showing how they relate and showing how they interact, because they are not separate. Just like we learn, in holistic training, that there is no system in the body that's separate from another system. They all work synergistically. They all have an effect on each other and are all meant to work in sync. I like to use the word in sync as opposed to in balance, because we tend to get stuck with balance. Like we have to be so keep this perfect line. The body does that for us, but we feel like we have to keep this perfect line. Like, oh, I don't want to get off balance, because if I get off balance, the world will end. But if you think about it as being in sync, where there's this flow to it, and there's an ebb and flow, and it's not so rigid, and you allow for the things to come up in your life, and you're not so rocked by them, because again, you have a foundation for who you are. So in the process of creating this, I began hiring some mentors, and this was an important piece of the puzzle for me. It was moving forward, and so I hired a mentor back in 2018, and it was to kind of teach how to build a group program. And I didn't end up doing that at the time, but the information and the guidance and the support was really invaluable. And so I began working with another mentor this year, and it has really transformed the way that I approach my practice, the way that I approach working with clients, my own self-confidence, in really understanding what I'm doing and why I'm here, and why I work with clients, and what I'm creating here. And it has been significantly helpful, because when you work with a mentor, just like with Dr. Schwartz going through the nutrition consultant program, she was so instrumental in meeting with her, every month, whether it was on the phone or by Skype, and talking through the program, what was going on, where was I stuck, what questions did I have. It was an instrumental piece of the puzzle to have someone to bounce stuff off of, here's what's going on, I'm stuck here, I don't really understand this concept, or I don't know what to do with this, and to walk me through and not tell me the answer or not tell me what to do, but really guide me to my own understanding. And so as I've worked with now with clients, it's the same type of thing. I'm not telling you, I'm giving you guidance of what to do, but I'm also you have the answer within you, so it's helping them learn how to trust their own guidance system, trust that they know the answer, because as we know, there's so much information about health out there. It's very overwhelming, can be very confusing and very frustrating. That's usually where people are when they come to see me. They're so overwhelmed by all of the different options out there, and they just don't know what to do. So I created programs to tailor this. So the programs that I do now, I have a 3-month program. That's a one-on-one, and it's very intensive. Now, I've done some different levels of one-on-one, but this one is very intensive now, where we're really diving in. And so we meet 9 times over the 3 months. And again, it's all of this stuff combined. So I have that. Then I have a group program that I'm actually just finishing with the first one tomorrow. It's called Reclaim. And this program is specifically for women right now. And it's 8 weeks. We meet every week on Zoom. I actually have 2 of the people that are joining me from Switzerland. So we meet every single week, and it's like a progression of getting to know yourself. So it's deconstructing some of those old belief systems, and this is across the board again in the physiology and the mind and the mental, the emotional, spiritual side. So we're deconstructing, and then we get to build and create. So it's that, who are you? What do you want to build? How do you want to be in your life? What are your non-negotiables? What are your standards? What are your values? You get to create this. You are in charge of your life. Number one, you are in charge of your life outside of even the circumstances. You can work within circumstances. You are in charge. You really have that much power. It's amazing to watch people understand that, oh my gosh, I don't have to do things the way I've always done them. I can make a completely different choice. Owning their yes, owning their no. It's been a phenomenal thing to watch the progression of the women that have been in this group. It's just, I'm sad to see it end because it's been so much fun. So that's the other program that I have. And then I do for people who are really just kind of getting started and not really sure what to do yet, or just have a couple things they want to work on where they don't need a longer term intense. They can go through a 4-hour intensive with me, which is where we meet for one day for 4 hours. And we go into just a couple of the different areas that are most concerning for them and kind of walk through that process. So those are the programs that I've created. And what I wanted to say about the pricing for anyone who's looking to start their own business, this can be a really challenging thing, and it can be kind of a hiccup, I guess, for some people. It can be really hard to, like, how do I price programs? How do I say this is what I'm going to charge people? And so what I wanted to say about that, and just an encouragement for anyone who is moving into this part of their work and they're wanting to start a business, or they already have a business, is that you want to move away from putting a price by the hour and start looking at what is the value of the transformation that you're providing, because it's more valuable than what you realize. It's about all of the results they're getting, not just the physical results, but even if you're not doing the same work I'm doing, it still filters out into the rest of their life, into their relationships, into their work life, all of those things. So there's tremendous value in that overall transformation. So when you go to start doing your pricing, it can be kind of challenging to get out of the price per hour and look at it as the program, if you're doing a program, is the whole transformation. And understanding the importance of who you are as a practitioner will help you with figuring that out.
Such strong advice and such great learning that you've achieved through through practice and
it has taken me time.
This.
It has taken time.
It was a hard one. Finding it within yourself, right?
Yeah,
really finding within yourself these truths in order to be able to guide others. You know, one thing I wanted to reflect back to that you were mentioning in the nutrition consultant program was each course that you had a course conference where you dialogued with your instructor, and the value of that, of just, like you said, of giving you the feedback, the encouragement, the direction, all of it. It's very different than just going into a program online and studying on your own and not having interaction or guidance. And it's essential, especially in a clinical training program like this.
It is absolutely essential to have that mentorship and to have someone guide you through and help you find the places where you're stuck and you just can't see past it. So it was a really valuable part of the program for me.
And I love it also when you're talking about balance and balances versus being in sync. You know, I don't think, balance isn't people think of it as static. Balance, I'm just here. I mean, it's not. We are in flow. If we're not in flow, we're stagnant. We're stuck.
Yes,
and so I love the in sync component here.
Yes.
One other thing on this that I think is interesting, that you have two women in your group from Switzerland. How are you doing your promoting that you're getting, worldwide interest?
Well, honestly, I was thinking about this the other day, and the majority of people that I have come into my practice are actually referrals. So the two people from Switzerland, one is someone I've actually known for a really long time. And so she signed up immediately when I told her about it. And then she just happened to be on holiday with a friend and told her friend, and her friend reached out to me and signed up pretty much the next day. And so I've actually worked with a couple people in that circle since then as well.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, with all of this, what are your future goals and plans? Talking about goals and knowing what you want and where you want to go.
Yes. So some of the future plans really are, as far as this immersion program, kind of taking it to the next level and creating a space where I can bring in the one-on-one clients into a place where it's instead of being very clinical, that it's actually more of like, I don't know, living room based type of thing, where it's really sitting down with another human being across from me and having this, human to human and spirit to spirit conversation. So I'm looking to create actually a completely new space, physical space where I do my work. And then from there, something that I'm really interested in doing, and it's kind of this thing in the back of my mind, is creating a program. And it would be almost like some retreat intensives, like maybe once a quarter, for other practitioners, health coaches, nutritionists who are wanting to do this other type of work. They're like, yes, that resonates with me. I don't know how to get started. And bringing them in and kind of saying, this is how I do this work. And not for them to mimic a system, because it's not really system based. It's really about knowing yourself and then how to bring that into your practice. So that's something I'm very interested in doing, which will launch sometime next year. I'm just not sure about the time frame yet. So those are kind of the goals and things that I want to do as far as moving into the future.
I love it, bringing it up to the practitioner level and
Yes.
spreading this type of work. I love it.
Yes.
This has been a beautiful conversation. I'm opening it up to the people that are attending live. If you have any questions or comments, this is a good time now. But yes, we want to stay in touch with you, Amy. So this is a great last slide to let people know how to connect and speak to this a little bit. All the different things that way people can contact you and find out more.
Absolutely. So I'm most active on Facebook as far as what I'm posting, and so I do lives on there. I give information, and then I'll just post things that are coming to me like energetically, like what's coming into my field, and then I'm just sharing that out. So I do a lot of that on my personal Facebook page. That's the best way to keep up with me most of the time. I do have a YouTube channel. I'm not as active on there, but that will change throughout the next year. Instagram is also good. My website has kind of the overall information as far as how I practice and what I have offered available. Then I have some podcasts. So I was on the radio for about 2 years. So these are archives, and that was Thrive Life Radio, and it was a ton of fun. And then I have Wild Wisdom and the Modern Feminine Conversation. And those are both kind of on hold right now, but there's plenty of shows out there for you to kind of go and get an idea of what those were about. So there will be a new podcast coming up next year.
You seem so comfortable, being on screen and speaking to us today, and doing Facebook Lives can be a challenge. What was that like for you when you first started out?
So the first time I did a Facebook Live, this is probably 3 years ago or something like that. Now, it literally took me 2 hours to hit the go live button. I sat there with it and I had something specific I was going to talk about, and it took me so long. I was so uncomfortable because I'd never done anything like that. I was comfortable speaking like in a private group. I was good there, and I actually really enjoy public speaking, which is weird, but I love that about myself. So, but I was so uncomfortable with that, and so it took me 2 hours to hit the go live button. But once I did, I kind of forgot the camera was there, and it was just like this, like I was just having a conversation, and I wasn't really, trying to, put information out there. It was just like, this is what's on my mind, and this is what I want to talk to you about today. So since then, it's gotten much easier. I still have those moments, especially if it's like a hard conversation to have. It's a little challenging for me to hit that go live button, but always when I do, it just gets easier. And so really it is kind of a practice makes it easier. It gets a bit more comfortable every time. And for some people, it's still really hard, and that's okay. If you have something to share, your voice is very valuable. Do it anyway.
It's very different speaking to somebody that you can see.
Yes,
right?
They're
there, see their reaction.
It's very different.
We're very social creatures, and so we play off cues of each other like this too. So
yes,
You
exactly.
just gotta hold your own when you're.
Yeah, hold your own. Just go with it.
This has been so sweet. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you and to have you really share everything that you've been doing and where you're going now. I want you to stay connected and keep coming back and let us know how things continue to develop.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my experience at Hawthorn, because it was a really pivotal point in time in my life for me to go through those programs and what it has done for me and where it has led me, to today. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share what I'm doing now, because it's in large part because I went through those programs.
Thank you, Amy, so much.
Yes, absolutely.
We're very proud of you too.
Thank
You
you.
went through so much while you were in school and you persevered. And what you're doing now is really impressive and so very, very needed. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. I want to let people know about our next All About Alumni. We'll meet back here in a month on Wednesday, November 4th at noon Pacific time with Debbie Buckhold. She's a graduate from our unique Masters of Health and Nutrition Education program. She'll be sharing about her post-grad activities. And I'll remind you that we did record this today, and it will be up on our website in just a couple of days. You'll find it under archived webinars with a slew of other All About Alumni previous presenters to enjoy also. I think that's it. I want to wish everybody the best of health, encourage you to take good care. It matters so much.